Welcome to what is episode 8 of 100 Years of Marine Corps Tankers, a station dedicated honoring the legacy of Marine Corps tankers and remembering the stories of what made the community special, told through the words of those Marines that towed the line. Today, I'm joined by one of the top enlisted Marines serving on Marine Corps tanks today, Master Gunner Sergeant Manuel Herrera, aka Manny. Welcome.
Hey, good to see you. Haven't seen you in a while, sir.
And thanks for coming on today. So for all of our viewers that kind of know Manny, I learned something by going through his bio. Always thought Manny was a tanker of tankers and Marine of Marines, but turns out he's actually a prior soldier. So interesting fact, back in 1989, he served with the U.S. Army Reserves and went to boot camp between his junior and senior year of high school. And then in 1990, he went to AIT to be an artilleryman. And in 1991, went to Germany as part of the 11th ACR. Back in 1993, went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and then in 94, went to Fort Hood, Texas. And then back in 1995, he EAS'd from the Army and joined the Florida National Guard to be a Stinger missile operator with the 53rd Infantry Brigade. So that's quite a run of career there, all the way from back when you were 17 years old.
Yes, my mother had gladly signed to get me out of the house.
But then. Looks like you transferred to the Marine Corps in 1996, where you did an in-service transfer and became a grunt in 0311. And your notes in here say not sure why, but let's expand on that a little bit.
So the Army got me out of my hometown fast. So they had this thing called split option training, which is why I grabbed onto it. So after my senior year, I came back. Things in the Gulf started spiraling up. I tried to get there in time. I didn't. I got to the 11th ACR. I did end up deploying to Kuwait as part of the security forces there after the ground war was over. I did my time in the Army. Wasn't bad. Just there was something missing. So I did my tour, got out, and joined the National Guard because I always did enjoy going to the field, the shooting, all that stuff I still enjoyed. While I was in the National Guard, though, I had a series of, I would call them dead-end jobs going here and there. I was a customer service representative for Chase Manhattan Bank was the last one. And that part where they say that they recorded this for quality insurance purposes, they are absolutely right. I chewed a guy out on the phone. He ticked me off, so I yelled at him. I got sent to a class for customer service feelings, and I was going to lunch, and the whole week or so leading up to this, everywhere I went, I would see a Marine poster. I would turn on the TV set, there was a Marine commercial or a Marine movie. I remember Sands of Iwo Jima with John Wayne. All these things were out there like signs trying to tell me. So the final sign was I was going to lunch after that class, and it was the Burger King was in the middle of a plaza. And just to the right behind it, I could see USMC recruiting. I don't know why, I don't know how, but for some reason I had my DD-214 from the Army in my pocket. And I walked into Staff Sergeant Michael Gibson's desk. I hadn't thought about it, hadn't even done any internal review of what I was thinking. I just dropped my DD-214 on his desk and told Staff Sergeant Michael Gibson, how fast can you get me out of town? About 8 to 10 days later, I was in Parris Island, South Carolina.
Hoorah.
Ain't looked back since.
Hoorah. So then 1996, went to CBRF, which was the Chemical Biological Incident Response Force, with the Infantry Company, maintained security clearing of buildings to search and rescue. And then in 99, you PCA'd to Kilo Company 36, 3rd Battalion, 6 Marines, and deployed part of the 22nd MU, a Marine Expeditionary Unit, as a squad leader. And then you re-enlisted and lat moved to tanks. So what was your initial impression of tanks?
So I was with the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment. So I used to see the M1s all over the place. Always impressed me, but you didn't see a lot of them. I was an artilleryman. They were in front of us, not with me. When I got to the MU, I'd gotten hurt on a few hikes, blown my ankles, that kind of thing. And I knew that I couldn't stay in the infantry. My body wasn't going to keep up with it. So we had a tank platoon attached to us. I happened to be in the Mac company, and there were some unique individuals in that company, in that tank platoon, because one of them was Chris Jules. He was a sergeant at the time. One of the Lance corporals that helped me out after I re-enlisted, and he was at that Latin move re-enlistment, was Britt Higgins, Gunny Britt Higgins. He was a Lance corporal at the time. Had a truck that I needed a step ladder to get into. But I was very impressed with the platoon. I was impressed with the way they operated, and there was something about it. I just loved it. So when it came time to re-enlist, I re-enlisted, and I submitted my re-enlistment request, and my number one choice was actually Intel, and number two was tanks, and I have no idea what the third one was. And we were in Aqaba in Jordan, and my re-enlistment came back saying I was approved, but I was approved for Intel and tanks. Intel came with a $40,000 bonus. So I'm walking off the ship with my platoon sergeant, a guy named Wilton Muniz, and we called him Moo. Moo's idea of solving emotional dilemmas was a bottle of Yoo-hoo. So I told him I wasn't sure about what I was doing. So he's like, "Come on, baby, let's go get a Yoo-hoo." So we sat there on the pier, drank a Yoo-hoo, and he gave me probably the best piece of advice I think I'd ever gotten. He told me, he says, whatever you choose in the Marine Corps, make sure it's something that you'll wake up every morning, stare in the mirror, and you know you'll love. He says, that's the only way to make it last. And I went across the ship. The recruiter or the career planner passed across the paperwork, and it said, he pushed it across for Intel. I looked at him. Mumu didn't know. Nobody in the room knew. I told him I want tanks. And he called me a fucking idiot and for giving up the bonus. And my platoon sergeant stood up to him and he says, "Hey, Gunny, give the Marine what he wants. That's what he wants, so give it to him." So I'll always have a soft spot for Mumu. He gave me a lot of great life lessons. And then when I came over to tanks, it was a lot of the same kind of treatment I received that I got from guys like Staff Sergeant Wilton Muniz.
No, it's pretty crazy. That, your entire career came down to Moo and Yoo-hoo. So somewhere that's got to be.
Yeah, Moo and Yoo-hoo. Yeah. I've spent my life seeing a door that's cracked and wondering what's behind it, and I walk through, and I can't argue with the success of it.
No, man, there's a lot of leadership traits in there. Joking about Moo and Yoo-hoo, I mean, that's absolutely demonstrates somebody that took the time to kind of let you vent, be a listener for you, and empowered you to make those decisions. So, I think that surely influenced you as a Master Gunner Sergeant, the leader you are today.
Yeah, definitely. He had a big impact on me.
No, that's good stuff. So back 2000, went to Fort Knox with your tank school, and then you requested 1st Tank Battalion.
Yes.
You put that word in there. What? I think that word triggers something. What does that mean?
So, I do analyze things. It's not that I go blindly, but everybody always looked like they were afraid of 29 palms. That was one thing. I was like, you know what? I can do it 29 palms. I bet I can. It can't be as bad as the way everybody described it. Because up until then, I'd never actually been a CAX. And the second part was the environment. When I started talking about it and communicating with others about it, all the 1st Tanks guys said the same thing. They said, there's so much room out there, you can play all day firing main gun rounds and you don't have to worry about a thing. Just don't kill a fellow Marine. He says, but you can play with all the equipment and you'll be able to watch everything happen and unfold in front of your face, and it'll help you a lot. So I requested 1st Tank Battalion. And I remember asking, it was Willem Becker. Willem Becker was one of my tank instructors. Willem Becker's like, looked at me and goes, "Hey, man, do you know what you're doing?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I asked him, I'm like, "What do you think of my chances of getting 1st Tank Battalion 29 palms?" He goes, "Oh, I think they're just fine." I think you have no problems with that. You'll make it. So sure enough, I got it.
Nice. So going back here, 2003, you deployed with 1st Tanks in support of the invasion of Fallujah, and then ultimately that rolled into 2004. So what lessons were learned during this battle, and how did they come to shape the remainder of the deployments?
So I just gone through Master Gunner School in 2002. So I had a lot of stuff stuck in my head that I had to make sense of. And I spent a lot of time sitting down and talking to Kevin Galloway, Master Sergeant Galloway, because he was, I guess you call him my daddy. I had him and I had Top Mummy inside and as my tank leader. So I spent a lot of time talking to him, but it was putting it all together. So the invasion kicks off, and I'm a 2-tank, and I'd never been a 2-tank. I had done like 1 or 2 field ops as a 2-tank, but I went from a 3-tank pretty much straight to a 4-tank. So wrapping my mind around being that lead tank in a platoon, in a column, I was trying to figure it out. So with the invasion, I saw a lot of you know me, sir. I read history books like it's going out of style. A lot of things I read about tankers in wars past started to make sense. What's it like to be on the forward edge of an armored column conducting movement to contact? It's nerve-wracking, and it's stressful. And learning how to operate and live that way was epic. And a lot of the successes I got out of there, I can trace right back to a history book I read at some point on some guy's life being a tanker, either in Europe or the Pacific or wherever. What I came from that was the biggest thing I learned from the invasion was you better have your tank ready to roll at every moment. I actually instituted a infantry tactic with my crews. Nobody was allowed to bust out sleeping bags. You took your poncho and your poncho liner and you wrapped up in that and you loosened up your boots, but you weren't getting out of your clothes. So for 36 days, we rolled around like that. But we were always ready to go. Horse before the man was a big thing beating in my head. So we always took care of the tank. But that would be the biggest one. Fallujah was just different. The movement to contact was smaller. Like I'm not cruising along at 20 miles an hour looking for where the enemy is. I'm going speed of walking down tight city streets, waiting for the next RPG to come popping out. Because that's usually how we gain contact. I can't actually. There were a few instances where we were sitting far back enough after the actual battle in the city where I could see them before they saw me. But once we got into the city, it was they saw you first, they fired first, and then you acted from there. So you better be ready to accept the pain. And from that one's probably the one where I started piecing together the whole warfare experience, tactics, techniques, procedures, wrapping it all up into one and having the confidence in my capabilities and my abilities of my crew to make it up as you go along. You just take your experience, you apply it, and then you start working with the infantry and calling audibles on the play. Because urban fighting it's hard, it's rough, it's chaotic, and you just got to accept it for what it is, because if not, you're going to fail utterly and people are going to die. So for me, 04, that's what it taught me. You better be ready, and you better know what you're doing, and you better be ready to call an audible. So it taught me a lot.
Since 2004, I mean, obviously that was really the first time, possibly ever, that tanks were in direct support of infantry in that urban environment, like you're describing. What was the relationship, and what lessons did you guys kind of learn between, you being the tankers and the infantry, kind of on that mutual support piece?
So the way we were all struggling to figure it out, like we had the grunt phones, we had an idea of how it was supposed to go. But it's very simple to read a concept. It's totally different to employ it. So, you talk about the tank infantry arrival and stuff like that and yada, yada, yada. All that goes out the window in a combat zone. Yes, we still poke fun of each other because it's fun. It's an entertaining thing to do. We have a sadistic type of sense of humor, but we were figuring it out as we went along. I would get adracs over the radio, and I'm having to explain to them, don't necessarily give me an adrac unless we have time for an adrac. What do you want done? I will figure that out for you. So there was a trust factor getting built to the level of expertise we both had. Another one was we taught ourselves how to mark. My personal favorite was Echo 2-1. We called them Easy Company 2-1. Phenomenal company led by a Captain Douglas Zimbeck, who's now there's an award named after him, Douglas Zimbeck Award, the headquarters Marine Corps puts out. Because of the chaos in the city and everything that was going on, we had two techniques to let them know where was the infantry? So that company would not go out in the city out in the streets unless they absolutely had to. So they would run through the buildings. So the way for them to let me know where they were, because, remember how they used to teach you, like, hey, use chalk to mark the room you're in, right? That means you got to stand outside. So what they would do was start chucking furniture out the window. And that's how I knew where they were. So, you're sitting there driving along and all of a sudden here comes a love seat, outside the window, a cabinet, just anything they find in the room, they chuck out. And then the second thing was marking for tracer. I gave out more magazines than you can imagine. I would grab mags from magazines. I would load them straight up with tracer. And every time they were trying to mark for me, I would chuck a magazine out of the TC's hats and go mark for me. They would mark for me, and I would start putting, and I warned them, every time I start, I'm going to start with a main gun round, and I'll follow that up with coax. And you play me on from there, but this is the package deal you're going to get when we start going in a gunfight. We started playing with IR lenses, like the infrared lenses we had. Remember those really crappy ones we put on top of the rifles? I took mine off my rifle, and what I would do was I had a dummy quarter to my flak in a little pouch. And every time they were trying to talk me on in the dark, I would say, okay, stand by, look for IR. And then I'd pop it out of the hatch and I'd start shining it, and they would guide that light to where they wanted me to take a shot or what they wanted me to observe. And then I'd pull the gunner into it. So my gunner was a guy named Chambers. Chambers was a great gunner, phenomenal, trained by Nick Popovich. That guy could see everything. So me and him came up with this game. I would spot somebody, an enemy insurgent moving along a wall or moving into a building. He would get the gun onto it and he'd laze the wall and to get ready, and then he'd set his gun. I'm like, which way do you want me to flush him out? And he'd be like, flush him out to the right. I'm like, okay, stand by. And I would take my 50 cal, and I could do this in the dark too. I would take my 50 cal and start pumping armor piercing rounds through the wall. Well, they would get up and try to run. Chambers would get them, like with incredibly short. Like Chambers was whiz when it came to that turret. Like he was brilliant.
Yeah. So, just the lessons learned. Just the ability to think through, those critical problems and come up with solutions and think on the fly. That's ultimately the essence of a tanker. You guys paved the way for us, all the way back then. And we benefited from your lessons learned, from your techniques, in subsequent deployments. But yeah, you guys were really the ones out there that were hooking and jabbing and doing it. So hats off to you, brother.
Thank you. But we were trained the same way. Like, look at the leadership I walked into. My company commander was Captain Sharp. I had my tank leader as Top Mummy. I had my master gunner as now Mass Sergeant Galloway, retired. I had Troy Yates. Nick Popovich was in the battalion. He was in Alpha Company at the time. We had Alan Johnson, Scott Martin. You can't go wrong with that kind of level of expertise. Staff Sergeant Davis retired at Gunny. The numbers are the level. When I showed up, I was basically told in no uncertain terms, here's the deal. Your success and failure rests on how much effort you're willing to put into this. We will take you there. The question is, do you want it enough? Right. And I'll be honest with you. I was a sergeant. I had plenty of experience. I'd already done a deployment, and not even counting my Army time. And they made me a loader. Mm-hmm. I was a loader. I answered to a PFC named Michael Gannon, and me and him had to come up with a working relationship. And I told him straight up, I'm like, look, when we're on the tank, you're in charge, but I'm still a sergeant. Address me properly and tactfully. But Michael Gannon was, I would say he was one of the ones who kind of started off for me, because he would teach me every day something new I didn't know. And because of that, I just, you got no room to grow. If you don't grow, then it's your fault. Sure as hell ain't anybody's around you.
One thing in common, I know most of those names that you named from the guys that were, your leaders and the folks you looked up to. And I will say the one thing in common between the ones that you named is their love for tanks. It's they, mm-hmm. This community and that generation in particular, their love for tanks is just bar none. And also their willingness and their desire to learn. Like you said, just learning and learning about the tanks, learning something new. I mean, that's really what makes us special, because that beast is, the vehicle alone. I mean, you can attest to it. You're a master gunner. I mean, the vehicle alone is extremely complex, and you're not even talking about the employment of it. And then when you add the human aspect of the crewman, and multiply that by 4 for a platoon, and by 12 or 14 by a company, I mean, it's just insane. It's crazy, and that's really what makes this community and folks like yourself and those leaders that paved the way for you just so absolutely special. And speaking of that, so I went back to Fort Knox to be the tank leader for the Marine Armor Crewman Corps. Obviously going back to Fort Knox was probably a good experience for you, having gone through there and knowing those guys. And now is time for you to kind of pay back and be that instructor for those guys. So what any thoughts from that time?
So I was a brand new gunny. And for those that don't understand it, when you're a sergeant, by the time you're a sergeant, you've got it figured out. Life is incredibly fun, incredibly easy. What do they call it? The working supervisor. Staff sergeant's a hard one. That's where you're transitioning from one to the other. And I did not enjoy my time as a staff sergeant at all. But I go to Knox and I'm a gunny. And now I'm dealing in another world that I had no experience in. My entire time in tanks has always pushed the envelope for me, because I always end up somewhere where there's no comfort. I have to figure it out, and I have to work with other people. Well, I was lucky because here I am running a tank school. I'm running it with a bunch of young PFCs and Lance Corporals who don't have any idea what they're doing. I have a lot of solid sergeants and staff sergeants who work for me who got more tank experience than I did at the time. And I'm supposed to be the gunny. Thanks to my experiences at First Tanks, that set me up with the experience level. But I also had Master Sergeant Alan Arnold, who retired Master Guns Alan Arnold, as my platoon commander while I was the tank leader. So he walked me through how to be an effective tank leader. So now I saw the other side. I'd seen the combat side, I'd seen the training side. Well, now I'm seeing the educational side. Programs of instruction, how to teach, how to pull guys in, how to get them, how to develop young leaders when it comes to PME, because it's an Army. We're at the Army Center of Excellence, I think is what the Armor Center of Excellence, I think is what they ended up calling the Armor Center. And, how to manage people in that kind of environment. Fort Knox was a great learning experience. And then when I went over to teach at ANOC, which they renamed Maneuver Advanced Non-Commissioned Officers Course, I'll let you put the letters together yourself. That's where I learned the bread and butter TNR stuff, and how it all connects and brings it together. I'd done all those things before. I'd seen them done before, both well and bad, but I never understood why. And I'm a big why guy. So teaching over with the Army was an eye-opening experience from the respect of, man, it kind of opened my eyes to the company level operations, even battalion level operations.
Then in 2008,
you can't be a tanker not.
Yeah. 2008, went to 2nd Tank Battalion, PCS there. So you left the desert for a little bit, went over to the East Coast, North Carolina, and then you did a back-to-back deployment, which from 2008 to 2010 was pretty aggressive. First deployment was in Iraq with Alpha Company, and then went out on the 26 MU, and then took the BLT into Afghanistan. So I want to focus in on the Afghanistan deployment because I know there's some interesting nuances there. But starting with the first two, what you have any comments on those?
So the Iraq deployment was it was different. It wasn't, admittingly I was, my last experience in Iraq hadn't been exactly, it wasn't, it was the most dangerous probably deployment I've ever done. Mm-hmm. So I leaned on my platoon incredibly heavy. I was not going to brook any issues or any concerns when it came to training. So I had a great lieutenant, Lieutenant Tom England, who I still stay in contact with. He got out, he lives in Nebraska. And I pushed them hard. We did together. He bought off on what I was saying. so when we got to Iraq, it was mostly a lot of patrolling. It was a quiet deployment. Didn't see any enemy action. A lot of patrolling, keeping stability going, voted Ruth. But when I got out, so do you remember Master Guns Larry Zabinski? He was the ops chief for Second Tank.
Yeah, I know the name.
So Zabinski wanted me to come back to be the battalion master gunner, and I was not that. I wanted to deploy again. I mean, it's Pop used to say it all the time. He goes, Marines are deployed. I want to be deployed. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to go back out. So I waited for Zabinski to retire. Master Guns Alan Arnold took over. They sent out a request for volunteers for a MU deployment, and I was one of the ones who volunteered. And luckily for me, I brought a lot of guys from that company with me on the deployment. I think I had pretty much all my gunners and tank commanders and a couple of loaders, or a loader or two were from that deployment. So I got a bunch of new joins that were very young, and the training was very easy for the MU deployment because, I had a lot of guys who understood my concepts and how I approach training. And so building that platoon was great. And it was a phenomenal platoon. I had Lieutenant Kevin Newport as my platoon commander. Yep. He's now a major in Okinawa. He's my platoon commander. I had Staff Sergeant Jimenez as my two tank, now Gunny Jimenez. And then I had a guy named Sergeant Plummer as my other tank. And we still stay in touch, a lot of us do. It was a great platoon. But working up for that MU was tough. It was very difficult operating environment, simply because, trying to get on ship, doing amphibious operations, the planning, trying to keep them focused on what's going on and not the libo tours and stuff like that. But that whole Afghan thing kind of threw a huge wrench into it. Right. So.
You talking about Santana Jimenez?
Yes, I am.
Hey, he's Mass Sergeant now.
God, I feel bad. I forgot. I still remember him because I remember when he got promoted to Staff Sergeant. He came to my platoon as a sergeant. A week later, he got promoted to Staff Sergeant.
Right.
He's a great Marine. I love that guy.
It means you're getting old, brother. So, good.
Well, now First Sergeant Jamal Youssef, right?
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Okay, Jamal Youssef was one of my students when I ran the MAC. So
yeah,
he's caught up.
Yeah. So 2010 BLT deployment to Afghanistan. So you're going out there without tanks, and it comes to be that you're supported by another tank unit. So what was it like being on the flip side of that coin?
So we were all on float, and they decided to surge us into Afghanistan to help clear a route to get up to the Kajaki Dam. So we get surged in Afghanistan. I get to, we used to call it Camp Cupcake, Leatherneck. We get to Leatherneck. I know there's tanks in country, so I tried to get them. Come to find out, Delta Company first tank showed up a few weeks earlier than I expected. They'd already snagged all of them. So, in fact, I was coming out of the chow hall and I could hear them zeroing off in the distance, which kind of ticked me off a little bit. So I get linked up BLT 38. That's who I was attached to. We started working up. I'm inside one of the plans operation centers, going on how we're going to start doing the occupation. We ended up building a COP called Let, named after a Navy Cross recipient posthumously. And they tell us tanks is getting attached to us. So I'm standing there like, are you kidding me? I went into the colonel's office trying to see if I could steal some tanks. He's like, no, you're going out. You're our jump. I'm like, okay, roger that. I got to do jump. So it was rough to watch. They did a great job. Don't get me wrong. But it was like first tanks in Afghanistan. I'm not on it. My platoon ain't on it. They get the MPHE round, the multi-purpose high explosive round that we bought. They get that. They got to shoot it. I didn't get to shoot it. I wanted to shoot it. And they were at the friction point. I still remember I was in the COC when the first contact report came out. Squad in contact, far side of, they called it the NES Canal. They were trying to break contact. So they sent a section of tanks down there, and it was really rough terrain to get a tank in because there's a lot of mud underneath and everything like that. So his name was Sergeant Will. I remember that much. He's the tank commander, and he starts spraying 50 cal and 7.62 across the NES to suppress the enemies on the far side. So they get them suppressed, and the infantry starts breaking contact coming across the bridge. So they come back over the bridge, and just as the last guy comes up on top of the bridge, the dude cooks off the first multi-purpose high explosive round fired in anger. He set it on delay mode, and he set it into the wall, and it did exactly as advertised. Went through the wall, detonated just on the far side. And then they got everybody out. The tankers came back. I'm sitting in the commander's update brief at the end of the day. I'm sitting in the back of the room for the Cub, they called them. And they had picked up chatter from the local Taliban commander telling his guys down there, hey, go get the bodies and make sure they get a proper burial. And the response was, there are no bodies to bury.
Wow.
That round went off as advertised. And I think we could thank Eric Benitez for that one. Eric was a PM Syscom when we purchased that round. That was a beautiful bullet. Beautiful bullet.
Nice.
Loved it.
That's what we do. That's why we do it.
Yes.
So 2011, went to Company A to be a tank leader. And then 2013 to MCTOG. So get to MCTOG, Marine Corps Tactics Operations Group. Obviously you have, number of deployments, a lot of experience, working for joint sister services, deploying with those guys and everything. How did that apply to your knowledge gained whenever you kind of worked your job at MCTOG?
So, your tankers are funny, and I'll tell you why. One, we understand maneuver warfare in a way I would argue most people don't. We believe in the ebb and flow of battlefield and just, finding a hard spot, delaying that hard spot, find a soft spot to get at the hard spot. Like, we excel at that. Going to MCTOG and seeing all that come together was where I got the other side of the envelope. Because as a tanker, you walk from COC to COC to COC, getting attached from one unit to another unit to the other unit. I remember I was a staff sergeant out here doing a steel night, and I got attached to 3 different units. And I would operate with one for 2 days. They'd tell me, hey, you're detached, you're attached to this guy, drive across the desert, go find that COC, walk into that COC, get the update, go operate with them for a few days, get detached, go find another unit, go attach, go pick up the orders, and start operating. So when I got to MCTOG, it was, again, one of those, it was kind of like being an ANOC instructor. Well, I've been taught all these things. How does it all fit into the grand scheme of things? So when I got to MCTOG, I had to figure out, like, okay, well, what do you mean when you say these things? And I learned a ton about MAGTF operations at MCTOG. I learned a lot. Every day was an education in concepts, doctrine, and these are things I knew before, but I'd never seen them through that aspect before. So being around those guys, I was surrounded by brilliant officers, brilliant staff NCOs. One of them was a tanker, now Colonel Ben Adams, 1st Tank Battalion Commander. Me and him had conversations daily. Now retired Colonel Keith Tye, tons of conversations with him. Master Gunnery Sergeant Brooks, Brandon Brooks, he's a buddy of mine. He's in the infantry. And I got to meet a lot of these guys, and it kind of opened my aspect to where everybody was. In fact, I've got a buddy of mine who's an ops chief for one of the infantry battalions, and we still talk on a regular basis. Thomas Bain out in Hawaii. He's working this MLR thing right now. You better be quick. But the one thing, while I learned a lot, we taught them a lot. What does it mean to do command and control on the move? What's it mean to understand that this is a finite, limited pieces of resources you have? Now plan. You're an operations officer, you're an operations chief, intel officer, whichever staff job you have in a tank battalion. there's a finite number of you. So the delegation of authority and responsibilities gets pushed further down than pretty much in any battalion I've ever seen. And I evaluated, gosh, I don't know, 15, 20 infantry battalions conducting ITXs of one sort or another, whether it's MWT, Mountain Warfare Training Center, or the big service level training event here, integrated training exercises. So we taught them what it means to think mobile and think maneuver warfare and think faster. So, because we're a unique organization. We were both supported and supporting. So while we spend a lot of our time in training supporting other elements, when we go into combat, we're supported. And then, you have Steel Night exercises that we used to do every December that now the division does as part of a division exercise. So, we saw both ends of the spectrum. And if you're a tanker, your number one concern is fuel and ammo. So how to take care of that, how to get parts out to wherever you are, how to pull maintenance out in the middle of nowhere and put it together. One of the best mechanics I ever had was a Corporal Bailey. And this guy somehow, and I still have no idea how he did it, but in the middle of nowhere, I had a shaft that had split at the joint. This guy brazed, melting two entirely different types of pieces of metal to put together to keep my tank operational. My tank operated like that for the remainder of the deployment. I was logging 15 to 1,700 kilometers a month. So, I mean, how do you get that?
Right.
Like how do you, he's a corporal. He's a young kid. He was on his first contract and he figured it out. And that's the kind of stuff we teach. It's not just the tanker. It's the tank mechanic who to me is always a tanker. And it's everybody who comes together who figures it out.
Yeah, I mean, we on this show we've mentioned a few times about tankers dealing in map sheets where the infantry is very comfortable dealing a couple hundred meters or a grid square, a couple grid squares at most. And I think in MCTOG, at the higher levels when you're dealing with battalion commanders and folks that are coming through there for battle staff training and whatnot, I mean, we already have a level of understanding as far as that goes, and we know capabilities and limitations, and that's I think that's one of the things that. I obviously never gone through MCTOG as a student, but I observed quite a few times up there. I think I even observed with you a few times. And that's the one thing that I think tankers bring to the fight is that we can take the problem set and understand it for what it is and work through all of the different angles as far as the logistics, ammunition, tactical control, communications, all those different things are things that kind of come inherent to a tanker because we are doing all that on a microcosm level if it's a platoon. Or if you're a company commander, you do it as a company commander so that then, for the infantry, they're kind of, they always seem to be kind of micro-focused. Yeah, they understand combined arms very well and they understand fires and support and things. But putting the whole package together, I think just tankers had a better perspective. Do you agree with that?
Well, yes, sir, because you grow up with it. Mm-hmm. I had 11 tank commanders at one point here that were lance corporals. They don't know they're not supposed to be doing that. Mm-hmm. They don't know that. They don't understand table of organization equipment. They don't care. Hey, newsflash, you're a tank commander. Here we go. Let's teach you. And you teach them, but these are guys who grow up with 2 radios and an intercom on top of that. And they're, like you said, they're dealing in map sheets. They don't realize that what they're doing was never envisioned for someone at that experience level in that rank. So it goes back to the old saying, rank don't tank. I had an infantry colonel, post battalion commander, look at me one day. He goes, "You know why I love tankers so much?" And I was like, "No, sir." And he says, "It's simple. All I need to give you is a language lesson, and you guys speak MAGTAF." He says, "You guys understand it at a way lower level than anybody else does." He says, "We just got to teach you the verbiage. Once we teach you the verbiage, you guys got to figure it out. It's simple, And he's right. He's absolutely right. When the division had to plan pauses in order to slow down the operating tempo so that other units could train as well because we're outpacing them. Simply because we don't think in any other way. Where do you want me? What time do you want me there? Got it. I already backward planning. I know when I need to pick up fuel and ammo. I already know when I'm picking up chows, POLs, I'm pulling maintenance. I've got my SP time set. I've got it. I'm checking my MVGs and make sure my tank is operational, and I'm moving in the dark. And we do it lights out. We do everything lights out. A lot of the Marine Corps is learning how to function in the dark, and we've been doing it forever. Right. We just don't stop. And It's the one thing I've always loved about this community. You know, we don't, no goal on the table, no sense of stopping the process. This is your mission, execute, and we'll catch you on the other side. Love it.
So 2016 all the way through, you've went back to First Tanks, and you've been there ever since. Currently serving as the as Operations Chief, and obviously that's a long period of time. But I'm going to open this question up and kind of throw it out there and see where it takes us. What memories will remain prevalent from your time serving with the First Tanks?
I think it'll, my favorite memory, it's actually not anything special. And it happened probably a million times. You know, it's you climb off your tank and you pull your CVC helmet off and you're sweaty and you're wiping off and you're pulling in the resupply. And that's like the first time you've seen your buddies in like 24 hours, right? You know, we do social distancing really well with dispersion and stuff. So collecting your notes, talking to your Marines, because at the end of the day, when the tank is a machine, but it takes the crew to get it going. If not, it's just a mega paperweight. Mm-hmm. So it's watching everybody climb out of their tanks after a successful mission. They're high-fiving, they're smoking and joking, but they're still pulling maintenance. They're still doing what they're supposed to be doing. It's something I know when I retired, that sense of crew is what I will always miss. I miss it now. I tell people all the time, if it wasn't for my wife and kids, I'd be the best tank platoon sergeant in the whole wide world, because I would have never gotten promoted to Afghanistan. I absolutely loved that dynamic of being in a tank crew and being in a platoon. There's something about that environment that, as miserable as it could possibly get, whether it's rain or heat or anything else, I mean, it's you and your brothers, and you're doing your job, and you know, when you climb out of that tank, everybody's happy you're there, or glad you were there, or just trying to figure out when you're coming back. I remember the day my son was born. The next morning, we went to start doing the paperwork for his birth certificate. And I was down at the administration section with my wife. And this guy, I have no idea who he is, not a clue. I don't. He came out of nowhere from behind the counter, like it was one of those booths kind of things, booth windows. He came out from his desk, came outside into the hallway where I was at, and gave me a huge hug. I'm like, oh, hey, no idea who this guy is. He was a corpsman, and I just want to say thank you for everything you did for me, because you saved my life in Fallujah, and I thank you for it. And then my wife is like, oh, my wife's like, very proud, and I'm happy. And then she walks off and she asked me, who was that? And I said, I have no idea. No clue. No idea who that man was. But I'm glad I saved somebody. The love of the infantryman, we have a hate-love relationship, but the love's always there, right? Mm-hmm.
So you already talked about it. You already kind of alluded to it. Obviously folks like you, folks like me here shortly, we're facing our retirement. But that's not everybody. This channel has really taken on kind of a personality, and it's one that is an opportunity for folks like yourself that certainly would be invited to Tank Battalion Balls to serve as a guest speaker. That's not going to happen, and the reality of that is painful. And I guess before I ask you the following question, I'm going to ask you one before that. So the Marines are First Tanks. Those obviously are your Marines, and you're intimate with a lot of those guys and gals from the companies. What's the hardest part about seeing the divestment of armor from their perspective?
It's the cohesion. They love what they did, and they were a rarity. We're not very big, never have been. I think that is part and parcel why the standard for operational expertise was so high. But they're going to miss that chaotic, fluid, ever-changing, constantly challenging environment that they were in. I remember walking through the tank ramp, and I swear to you, I felt like the whole battalion had deployed and they forgot to tell me. Everybody was gone and operating. And I think they're going to miss that. I remember a study being done. 1st Tank Battalion fired more main gun ammunition in 1 year than divisions anywhere in the world. Like, that's fact. We fired rounds constantly. We constantly went out there. And while it was hard and it was stressful and it beat down your family a little bit, it builds a camaraderie that you just can't replace. You can't find anywhere else. And I think that's what they're going to miss the most. You know, that sense of, you know, earned uniqueness is what I like to call it, right? Like, I'm unique, but I'm unique because I earned it, not because anybody gave it to me. Or, you know, so I think that's what they're going to miss the most. Because here, you know, in tanks, hey man, you want it, earn it, let's do it. And a lot of kids love doing that. I've been begged to go to Master Gunner School. I've had Marines asked to be tank commander, so I shuffle them from one company to another so they can be a tank commander. Guys who wanted to gun, people who push the envelope, like, that's who we are. Like, that's who we always are. And we're going to lose that. And that's what's going to hurt.
No, earned uniqueness. I never heard that before. That's an interesting phrase, and one that I think certainly encapsulates what we as tankers kind of represent, and especially what those younger kids represent. Because nothing's been given to us.
If you can figure out if I can make money off of that, let me know.
We'll work on that. So, how are the Marines holding up?
They're doing real well. We've been scheduling a lot of briefs for them. We're calling them road shows. We had, you know, nothing to think of, so we did a lot of road shows. A lot of base entities came out to talk to them. EOD. I had the Army recruiters come down and talk to them. Because at this point, it's up to them. They got to make decisions. I just want to make an informed one. Me and the Colonel both. We've had long conversations about this. So I've had signal intelligence guys. Recon came out and talked to them. Everybody. The division's been very helpful. The first Marine Division staff and General Castelvi have been batting for us and helping us out. So I got no bones with that one. I mean, they've done a phenomenal job. We did a virtual roadshow with the 18XX monitor and the 2146 monitor, tankers, tank mechanic monitors. We VTC'd them into the base theater. Like, their heads were like 20 feet tall. It was beautiful. And we had a station up there, you know, and they briefed, and the Marines could go up and talk to them and ask a question or whatever. And yeah, so guys are starting to get, you know, we're you know, 12 steps of the grieving process. We're kind of moving to graduate acceptance, and they're trying to figure out their futures. We are working, the base is working really well. Colonel Ron Storr is the J3 MTD, the last M60 tanker left on active duty. He's been opening up job profiles for our Marines on base who intend to just EAS, stuff that builds them a skill. UAS, Unmanned Aerial Systems Operator, I think that's what you call it. Doing that for the base. Yeah. So people have been 29 Palms, Camp Pendleton, very helpful guys. The Marines are now looking, okay, what options are available to me. So it's working out. Colonel Ashenhurst, Chris Ashenhurst, he's been working with us to kind of give us an insight on, hey, look, guys, these are your choices. This is how it's going to work. This is what's coming out. This is where it's going. You know, the rollout is the rollout. But there are a lot of good Marines in the middle of it, both enlisted and officer, who have been trying to help them build future plans.
Yeah, I mean, I understand exactly what you're saying as far as the Marines. You know, they're resilient as hell. You guys have certainly done a lot as far as, you know, trying to do the right thing and take care of them. So I applaud your efforts in that regard. That's really pretty good. You know, and obviously that's what this channel is really for. It's for those Marines to kind of know folks like yourself that they may never have an opportunity to kind of work with or see, especially if they're junior Marines on the other coast. but this is an opportunity to kind of get some information out there and deal with this as a community. And I know obviously you're grieving in your own way, as is the remainder of the community. But I appreciate you taking the time, and certainly appreciate all the viewers and everyone coming on this channel. What parting comments do you have for our viewers?
Being the last, it sucks. It's hard. My wife sees it. My kids see it. They know that I have an emotional attachment to 1st Tank Battalion and all tank battalions. But 1st will always be my home. They know I have an emotional attachment to it. What I've come to accept is that I did have my moment in the sun. We all did. And I know that there are people walking the streets today because we were there, because we saved them when they needed to be saved. We won because we were there where they needed us, when we were needed. But I will say this, when I watched that last tank go out, that hurt. But what it took with it probably hurt the most. And that's because there's something about mixing a machine with 4 individuals that cannot be replicated. And I'm sure air crews feel the same way, but there's something about a machine that is not just your tool, it is your home, it is your livelihood, that is irreplaceable and undescribable. So what I would tell people is history is important and it teaches you lessons. And we hope and we believe that we've left behind a history that we set the bar pretty high. So we wish you the best of luck achieving that standard.
Well, today's been an honor. I absolutely appreciate you making the time to come on here. I'm gonna give you an opportunity to kind of plug what you got going on. I know you have some projects in the works. You being a history buff yourself. So if you want to spill the beans on the project you got going on, I'll give you the opportunity.
Okay, so we wanted to go out with a bang. We don't do anything halfway, right? So there's 2 concurrent projects going on with 1st Tank Battalion. We stood up something called Task Force Heritage, and it's made up of a few young officers, enlisted Marines. Our operations officer pretty much runs it. We've got a lieutenant as the OIC of the project, as the action officer, a young tank lieutenant. And we even roped in he roped himself in. Our MMO wanted to get involved, Lieutenant Simpson. But we're trying to build a monument on the base. 1st Marine Division and Marine Corps Ground Combat Center audit. We're trying to work our way right now through the legalese and acquisitions, but we're going to put on display the M1 we have at the tank ramp, the M60 Widowmaker that used to sit out in front of our chow hall back in the day, which still runs. Brakes are a little sketchy. And the Leisure Lady, along with a MGySgt that we're currently in the process of kind of refurbishing up to put her out on display, because I think it's important to have a MGySgt. And so that's one. We're not sure what exactly it's going to look like. We're working with the base to come up with a design feature. And they're talking about putting it on the General's lawn right in front of the headquarters building. That's where they wanted to put it. Great assistance from the base. The second one is a documentary we're putting together. So we're working with Division Comstrat and a little bit with Base Comstrat to collect our history, right? And we are looking at it. Yes, 1st Tank Battalion will be the focal point, but we're going to talk about tanks in combat. And we're going to track our history from World War II all the way to the present time. We've reached out to a lot of veterans from it. One gentleman I had the distinct pleasure of talking to the other day, his name is Master Gunnery Sergeant Len Maffioli. He's 95 years old as of July 5th. He landed at Saipan, Tinian, Iwo Jima, went to Korea, fought in Incheon, Seoul, and Chosin, was captured, escaped, came back, and then he was in Vietnam, and I want to say he was at Wei, Chulai, and Da Nang.
Wow.
So, and he is still spry and kicking. So I got a chance to talk to him on the phone. We're going to interview him. Of course, we're going to interview Nick Popovich, Alan Johnson, a couple of the other guys for the current wars. And we've reached out to the Marine Corps Tankers Association for the Vietnam veterans and Korean War veterans to link in with them. So a lot of interaction. But we hope to have a 45-minute to 1 hour documentary on our history that on the day we do the deactivation ceremony, we're playing it on a loop in the base theater.
That's really something, man. I mean, congratulations on that project. I wish you the absolute best of luck. And
thank you.
For the viewers watching this, please make sure that you stay tuned to that. And hopefully you guys will be putting it out on some type of social media. And if you do, let me know.
That's the plan, free of charge.
I'll help out in any way I can. So,
yes, sir.
The viewers, thank you so much for the continued support. You guys, the population's continuing to grow. So thank you very much for that. And remember to subscribe and hit the bell. Master Sergeant Manny Herrera, thank you, brother. I appreciate it so much. It's been
thank you,
an absolute honor, and best of luck to you. And I'll do anything I can if I can ever help you out.
I will, sir. Thanks.
All right, brother. Out of here.